Hello and welcome to Paper Plays Julie K. Today I'll be showing you how to create this gorgeous fall-themed cylindrical box created from an oatmeal container. This will be a two-part video in which I show you how to construct the main part of the cylindrical box and also decorate the box in a fall theme using paper trims and gorgeous flowers from Kraft Supplies for you. Basic supplies for this project include, but are not limited to, an oatmeal container, chipboard, paper cutter and scissors, X-Acto knife, cutting mat, ruler, pen or pencil, washi tape, gesso, acrylic paint and a paintbrush, sandpaper or sanding file, a circle template, adhesive, scrapbook paper, embellishments including Kraft Supplies for You flowers, trims, closure and hinges, flat back pearls for the feet. The first step for this project is to take your cylinder type box. I'm using a Quaker Oats oatmeal box, and if you guys are curious, the height of this one's a smaller size. It is approximately 7 inches, and then the circle at the bottom is about 4 inches across. And so the first step that I'm going to do is you want to take some thick mat board or chipboard, some sort of packaging. If you're using some lighter weight packaging like a cereal box or something like that, I'd recommend doubling it up. But your first step is going to take, and we're going to trace the circle at the bottom of this. And we're going to do that twice. So I have 2 circles. Your next step is to go ahead and cut out those circles. So when cutting out your circles, you want to go ahead and stay just slightly inside your circle line or right on the line. So go ahead and set those aside for a moment. Now go back to your oatmeal container. You want to make sure if you're using some sort of food container that your inside is clean. The next step is to cut off the bottom, and you can see that in the bottom it's a little offset. It's about not quite an inch in, and you can either draw a line on the outside and cut, or I find it helpful just to wrap washi tape around the edge, and then I will cut right here along the edge of the washi tape. But you can also, like I said, just draw a straight line around, but I just find this the easiest. So once I've done that, you are going to take a very sharp X-Acto knife or cutting blade, and then you're going to cut that off. So just be careful and don't cut yourself while you're doing this. Okay, so I have cut off the bottom, and this just, you can recycle this piece, you don't need it anymore. But the next step that I do is I kind of take a look and I put it flat, and you guys can't see me, but I am looking to see that I cut it pretty level. If not, do a little more cutting, or sometimes I find that if you just use like a sanding block or a file, sometimes you can make it just a little bit more level if you need to. And as long as it's pretty level, you're good to go. So you can go ahead and take the cover off this side. Since this edge is already nice and clean, we don't need to do anything. And now this is going to be slightly smaller. We started off with a box that was 7 inches, and this is almost 6.5. So the next step is to decide how you want your little box to open. And there's a couple different options. Below in the description box, I will link a couple of gals that have done similar ones as far as like they've used Pringles or chip containers. You can cut all the way across and have it open up like that. You can cut a little rectangle out and just have a piece open up. I have a little template one that I did earlier, and this one I cut out, you can see 3 sides, and it just bends here to open. And I'm going to kind of do the same thing, except for this time I'm just going to cut the whole rectangle out, and then I'm just going to end up using hinges in the end to put it back on again, like this. So before you do this step, just think about how you want it to open. Again, I will leave some links below for some Pringle or chip container boxes where the ladies cut all the way across. and they just put it together a little bit differently, but I'm going to do this type of version today. So if you want to do this one, you just cut on 3 sides and you score it right here very good so that it opens and closes. But again, I'm going to cut this out. So then you need to decide what size opening or hole you'd like. And I kind of like, this one is going to be slightly bigger than the one I did before. So I decided to go ahead with a 3x4 rectangle. And you can just make a template, or you can do some measuring with your ruler and cut it out. But again, I just find it easier to place a template and just kind of draw around this on here, and then I'll go ahead and cut it out. So I will kind of approximate, I will do a little bit of measuring so that it's approximately the same on both sides before I lay this down, and I might even just tape it down with washi to make my life easier. So your guys's will be slightly different than mine depending upon how much you cut off on the bottom. So just find your middle and place your little rectangle template that you want to cut out. So I'm just using the washi tape to kind of help hold it in place a little bit, just to give me kind of an extra finger or hand to hold things down. And so what I'm going to do is just trace along my 3x4 template, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut it out after I've done that. Of course, if you want, you can just go ahead and measure and use a ruler to draw out your rectangle also. I just like the template. It makes life easier for me, for someone who hates to measure. And I'm just going to use a pen so I can see it better, but use a pencil. I am going to go ahead and cover this so I'm not worried about any markings I do on here. So I've gone ahead and drawn that rectangle on here, and again, you need to decide how you want your opening to go. If you want to use the hinge system, like how I'm going to do, or if you just want it on 3 sides. So again, cut it out whichever way you want, either on 3 sides or on all 4 sides, which is what I'm going to do. Again, use a very sharp X-Acto knife and be careful. If you find it helpful, again, you could draw out with your washi tape again along the edges if you find that helpful. And then also be careful where you place your hands so that you don't cut your hands underneath. So I decided to pop back on and just show you again how it would look if you were just to do the 3 sides. It would look like this. And then what you would want to do is take some sort of stylus or bone folder and just kind of work your fold up and down so that it opens nicely. Like on this one, what I was doing was taking my stylus, and then I did put a piece of washi tape along there and just kind of kept on working it like this, just so that I could get it open. But again, I want to use a hinge, so I'm going to cut my top one off, but I just thought I would pop on just to show you what it looks like with the 3 sides in case you guys decided to go that route for making your opening. So I've gone ahead and cut my little hinge off. So the next step you can do is a couple different things, is because this paper is kind of shiny, sometimes if you glue other paper to it, it might not glue as well, depending upon what type of glue you use. So you either want to go ahead and take some sort of sanding paper and just sand it so that you're prepping it to be able to glue paper on, but I find that this is pretty easy just to go ahead and rip off this layer of paper. So I go ahead and do that. Then I also take the paper off on this one. And for right now, I am going to eventually cover these, but to make my life easier in the long run, I'm just going to put top right there, and then I'll just put the word top here. Just so I know that this fits in there this way is how I cut it. And I'm just going to just do sand a little bit to make it look a little nicer. So at this point, before we attach the pieces to the top and the bottom, I do like to make sure that my circles are going to fit nicely on my tops and bottoms. If you have to, you can trim them a little bit. And mine are pretty good, so I don't think I need to do anything there. The next step is to decide how you want to decorate the inside of your cylinder box. And you can see on this one, I decided to add paper to it. It was kind of a little cumbersome to try and figure it out. And I ended up cutting my piece for here, and then I just went around the edges with a marker to make it look nice. And I'll just show you real quick how I added my paper in there. So like here's some scrapbooking paper. And then you'll want to use wet glue, obviously. For this one, it's easier than with tape. But what I did is I kind of figured out my paper size and I rolled it up. And I kind of fit it in there. Before I did the glue, I stuck this paper in like this. And I lined it up on the edges. And once I had those all done, then I went ahead and just traced this piece right here and cut it out. And then I also drew a line here for where I knew I wanted to cut my paper. And so then I went ahead and took it out, cut it out, and I used some sort of wet type adhesive or glue to do it. I'd recommend going that route versus tape, because you do need to roll your paper back in to get it in and then kind of spread it out. This time I'm going to go ahead and paint it. And so I will just start with a layer of gesso, and then I'm going to add green on the inside of this one. So I can do a little bit of that on camera for you guys, but I'm not going to show you the whole time I'm painting because that's kind of boring to watch, I think. And again, I'm just using this kind of as a primer or base coat. Okay, so I've gone ahead and gessoed one layer on the inside of this and along the sides, kind of like that. I'm going to let it dry, and I will come back and do a layer of paint next. And I'm also going to, while that's drying, I'm also going to just prep this too with gesso. Now that my layer of gesso has dried on the inside, this is kind of what it looks like. And I did go around just the edges right here, just in case some of the paper shows once I put that on. And I also painted the inside of the lid. And I also went ahead and painted the insides of my little box here with a layer of gesso. And now I'm going to go ahead and paint a second layer of color. And I'm going to paint it green. And I'm trying to go for this type of green on this paper. I'm going to use this on the outside. And this is the color I want. And I don't have any paint that's specifically that color or close to it, so I'm going to mix these two colors together to get as close as I can. It's a woodland green and a kiwi green. I'm trying to kind of come up with like kind of a leaf green color. And so this is the color I kind of came up with. It's pretty close, not quite, but close enough. And so I'm going to go ahead and repaint the exact same things again, this color green. And I'm also going to go ahead and I'll probably put 2 coats of this on. So after, again, I'm painting the inside of my tube and the inside of my sides and also the inside of the top with just a little bit showing around the edges. And again, I'll do 2 coats of that and I will be right back after I have done that. Okay, I'm back and I finished and everything is dried. I painted again the insides of my oatmeal container and I went around the edges just so that the brown chipboard wasn't showing. You could also go ahead and do that with a marker if you'd rather do that if you're doing just paper on the inside. I also went ahead and painted on the circles that go on the outside of our container. And I also painted the flap, the whole thing on the inside and just a little bit around the edges because I will be putting paper over that. And so now the next steps are we're going to be adding the sides onto our container and the top flap. And so you have some decisions to make on as far as how you put your container together. There's 2 options. The first option is you can go ahead and add some scrapbooking paper on the outside right away onto this circle. You take hot glue or a strong glue like E6000 and then just put a little bit around your edges and add this to both sides like that. So that's one option and it does work. That's how I did put this little template one or my sample one together just to see if this would work. I did it that way. And then the other option, if you want, which I'm going to try it this way just because I like to try new things and I just want to see how this turns out, is you go ahead and take whatever scrapbook paper you want to use on the side of your container. Like on here, I just have this color cardstock right here. I'm using this color right here. And what you want to do is go ahead and actually take this piece right here, this circle, and you're going to put it onto whatever scrapbooking paper you want. Again, you're going to trace around it. And then you're going to go out another 1/2 inch and do another circle. So if you have die cuts, go ahead and use those, obviously. But I have this little, I think it's called a cylindrical circle thing. So what I did is I went ahead and I traced this circle here in the middle. And then I just laid this on top. And it came pretty close to one of the lines. And then I just went out a 1/2 inch from there. And then I drew another circle using this. So then I came up with this. And so that's what the back side of my scrapbooking paper looks like that I'm going to put on the sides. And so what you want to do, and I just have some templates or samples, is you want to go ahead and just draw lines like this. Just angle out lines like this around this circle. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then you're also going to want to cut those out. They don't have to be perfect. You can see that they're not perfect. And so what the idea is I will glue this chipboard piece, the end piece, with the painted part this way and the part that I haven't painted back there. And then what I'm going to do is I will go ahead and add hot glue around here and then stick this on. But then your paper, once this is kind of glued on like this, nice, then your paper goes down and you bend these down, and so then it gives kind of a nice little finished edge, and then we'll put the other paper around on both sides. So you have different options on how to put it together, and you just have to do whatever option you think is going to work the best for you. You could also just glue this down first and get it on there all nice, and then go ahead and glue this one down on top. Whatever works best for you, it doesn't matter. It'll come out the same in the end. But I just wanted to give you guys options on how you could put it together and just to do whatever option works the best for you. And then also at the same time, make sure you guys pick out whatever paper you want to have for your main part. Like here, you can see this one. I use this leaf paper. I'm going to be using this leaf paper. All my paper today does come from the Bo Bunny Enchanted Harvest collection, in case anybody is wondering. And the one thing also you have to think about with this paper, or whatever paper you choose to use is, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to take a whole 12 by 12 sheet and wrap it all the way around this. It's too wide. And I'll show you guys what I mean if you were to cut out your paper so that it fits. And I like to cut mine out after I get the sides on. But if you see, if I wrap it all the way around, even if I leave that little header piece on right there, there's still going to be a gap. So you are going to have to piece your paper together some way when you put it on here. And so what I'll probably end up doing for that part of it, just so you guys know, is I will go ahead and cut my paper so it just goes all the way from here all the way around to right here. And then I'll put some strips of paper right here down the sides, and I'll glue those down first before I glue the rest of it on. So that's kind of my plan, because you can decorate it up pretty easy to fill in the different gaps. And of course I will also be adding some scrapbook paper to the top of my flap also. So that's the next few things I'm going to be working on. And I will just kind of do a little bit of a fast forward and just hit some of those different highlights and pieces so you guys can watch that. But I probably won't show the whole thing on the camera because that just takes way too long for everybody, and I've gone through all the basics of how to put it together. So I do like to take a little bit of a stylus and just trace around the circle. You could also use the end of your bone folder too, if you don't have a little stylus thing. And that just makes it a little bit easier when you bend. Once I cut out the pieces and bend them, it'll just make it that much easier to fold the pieces. So now you're just going to go ahead and cut out every other piece so that it ends up looking like this. And you can use your scissors, but I just find that the X-Acto knife works better just to get this little piece right here cut out. So after cutting out your little pieces, I do fold them in like this. And then we're going to go ahead and attach them to our little oatmeal container. And so what I'm going to do is just put a little dab of hot glue around here, and I'm just going to set this on top. Doing my best to line it up. And then I'll go back in with regular glue and just glue down the tabs. So that's what I have so far. And then now I'm going to go ahead and just glue these down. And I kind of like this method better than just leaving it straight glued, just because this adds just that little bit more security to make sure that your ends stay on. I mean, I've kind of pushed a little bit and it's not falling apart. So it seems like it's held together pretty good, but this just gives me just that little extra security to make sure that it stays put. And I'm just going to use tacky glue. So again, you guys hopefully can see I just added a little bit of glue to all my tabs, and I'm just gonna glue them down. You might have to hold them for a minute or two while you're gluing them down. So now here's kind of what I have so far. So while these tabs are drying down a little bit better, I'm going to start figuring out my next piece of paper to put on here. And again, you have to decide how you want it to piece it together, and there's no right or wrong way, but again, you're not going to be able to fit your whole piece of paper around here, so you have to make some decisions. And so again, what I'm going to do is line up my paper, and I'm going to cut it so that it lines up right there. And then I'm also going to cut it so that it lines up with this top part right here of this box. And then again, I'm going to cut some paper strips to go right here. And I'm going to let everybody measure their own, because it's going to depend upon how big an opening you have right here. And then also at the beginning when we cut off the ends, how much you cut off. So everybody's little measurements here are going to be slightly different. But that I just wanted to show you guys how I'm going to put together. So I'm going to go cut my paper, and I will be right back. So again, I decided to come back on and show you guys how I'm going to cut my paper. So I've already cut it to the right width of my project here. And I'm just going to line it up. Again, you can see the top part of my box here. And eventually I'll tape and glue this on. But I'm just going to hold it really tight and kind of wrap it around, keeping it lined up. And then when I get to this bottom, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this very well on camera or not, but I'm going to make a mark down here on my paper, right where the end of the opening is. So I'm wrapping my paper. So here's my little mark right here, if you guys can see. And that lines up with this piece right here. And so that's where I'm going to cut that piece. And then I'm going to go back in and use these paper strips left from this other sheet. And I'm going to cut my strips right here. But I just figured I'd show you guys how I was doing it in case you wanted to do it the same way. So I've gone ahead and cut my 2 paper strips, my bigger piece of paper, and then I also cut a coordinating piece to match the top of my flap that's going on there. And so I'm going to go ahead and attach everything. I am going to start off with my 2 paper strips. And again, you can use whatever works best for you, whether it's glue or tape. And I think I'm going to do a combination of both. I'm just going to use a little glue on the edge right here. And then the rest of it, I think I'm going to do, and then also some glue on this edge. Not quite sure how far that goes down, but, and then I'm going to put some tape on it also. So when I line things up, I prefer to make sure that this is flush, because on this edge you can cut it if you need to, but if you have a small gap, you can always cover it with some sort of like bead trim or some other type of trim when you're decorating. So just keep that in mind. when you're adding your paper strips, that if you're going to have a little bit of a gap, it's probably easier to add the gap on this side, the outside edge, than on the inside edge. So again, put your flaps down. And since I know my paper is going to go all the way up here, I'm just going to tear some of this off, I think. This one isn't laying very nice down there, so I'm just going to cut that off. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing over on this side. So now I'm going to go ahead and attach my paper. And again, I'll probably use a combination of both glue and tape. And I'm just going to do a couple pieces at a time instead of putting them all on. Just slowly work it around, just so in case I have to take my paper back up that I have a little bit of give. So again, it looks like I have a little bit of trim work that I need to do after I've attached this. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that. Okay, so I'm back and I'm going to do a couple more things and then also show you guys how to attach some sort of closure onto here, and then I'll probably have a second video actually decorating it some more if you guys are interested in watching that. I do have to say I wasn't 100% happy after I glued everything and taped it down. I do have a couple of wrinkles in the paper, and I am not, like I said, I'm not 100% happy with that. I don't know if that's because this was a little bit thicker paper than what I had worked with the first time I did it. This one ended up with only a wrinkle up here. Otherwise the rest of it's pretty good, and I think that that's probably why, was that this was a little bit thicker paper. I think it's still going to turn out just fine. Like I said, there'll just be a few wrinkles in it, but I can live with that. So to attach this, I'm actually going to use real hinges. You can buy these in the hardware store, and I have also seen them in Kraft Supplies at like Michael's and Hobby Lobby. I've seen them before, and they're just really small hinges. But there are other styles you can buy. Like here's a little bit bigger one, and then here's more of a square one. Just so you know that there are some different versions out there. Just use whatever works best for you or whatever you can find. And since this is a kind of a little bit heavier embellishment or a metal piece, I highly recommend E6000 glue. It does stink a little bit, so make sure you're doing it in a well-ventilated area. And if you have issues with smells, this might not be the glue for you, and you might want to do a little research and try and find a better glue to use. But this is the glue I like to use to glue down metal pieces. So before you go ahead and start gluing your hinges down, make sure you have your top and your bottom. And so now you want to take a look at your hinges. And there's a top side and a bottom side to your hinges. So the top side, you can kind of see the round part, and then if you flip it over, the bottom side will be completely flat. That way you know which way to glue up and which one to glue down. And you're either going to want to first glue onto here and then attach your flaps, or you're going to want to do it on here and then lift them up. And I don't think that there's a right or wrong way to do it. So what I think I'm going to do is attach them first to this piece and then go ahead and glue them onto the other piece. And E6000 glue does take a while to dry. And probably what I should have done is, I know that you can use hot glue to also, and put a little dab of hot glue just so it sticks right away, and then let the E6000 sit in place. And so you can see right here, I'm just kind of putting it on the edge. You want to make sure that this still flaps correctly so that when you attach it to the other side, it'll work. And so I'm going to very carefully glue my other one down. So I'm going to let these somewhat dry, and I will come back and attach to here, but I want to make sure that they don't move. So I will be back shortly. While my little hinges are drying, I think I'm actually going to go around the edges of the inside of the box with some washi tape just to add a little bit of color. And this was the only green I had in my stash. I would have probably liked it to have been just a little bit darker, but sometimes you just have to use what you have. And so with washi tape, I do recommend gluing also underneath it, because a lot of washi tapes are not very permanent. But I just think that would look nice just to have a little bit of green showing, and then just to kind of finish off my edges a little bit better. In this other one that I did, I just went around it with a brown marker, as you can see. On the inside, the outside I didn't do anything because I never finished decorating this one. So that's what it looks like now. I like that a lot better. It gives it a little bit more finished look, especially on the edges. And it looks like this is, it's not dry. It still needs to dry a little bit more, but at least it's in place. And I can work with it to glue the other piece down. And I will eventually add a piece of paper inside there too. So I am going to let this dry again, and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back and my hinges have dried. And what I ended up doing also is poking little holes through the holes, and I added brads into them just to finish it off a little bit. And while the glue was drying, I went ahead and added a little bit of trim around my top panel here, or flap. And I used this trim right here. I'm not quite sure where it came from. I'm suspecting maybe the Dollar Tree. It was in a Happy Meal package that I got a while back from someone. And so I did use that, and I will be using more of this trim around the edges. It's kind of cute little trim. It has little leaves on it. I wish I had this in some more colors. But I wanted to show you guys before I switch over to the other video exactly how to do a closure, or some different ideas for closures. And so I do have this piece that I've already layered up. It's a couple of pieces of Spellbinders paper, and then this little thing that says Colors of Fall. There was a Bo Bunny kit, or matching elements kit, for the paper collection, and I don't have it sitting on my desk, but this came off of it. It actually had this little border around it, but I didn't like that border, so I just cut it out, and then I layered it over a couple pieces of paper. And then on the back side, I did also add chipboard just to make it a little bit more sturdy. And so I'm going to use that right up here, and it's going to hide part of my closure. And so there's, like I said, there's a couple different ways to add closures to these. You can buy a product that looks like this. And then this is from Recollections, so I can't remember, is it Hobby Lobby that carries Recollections? But it goes like this, and it would have brads that go through it. And so what you would do if you wanted to use a closure like this is you'd attach this top piece to the flap, and then this piece to the bottom part, so it would go like somewhere like this. And then once that's dried, you'd attach it down here also. So that's one type of closure, is you could actually go out and buy some sort of closure like this. You can also buy little closures at the hardware store, and you just want to look at, just tell them you wanted a closure for like a jewelry box or something like that, and they would be able to help you find a closure similar to this at a hardware store. Also, there's also another option. These are the Tim Holtz hitch posts, and when you buy them, you get the little hitch post right here. This piece comes out. It unscrews. And then it also comes with an elastic band. I use these a lot on my junk journals. And so the idea with the hitch post then would be, you would take the hitch post right here, you'd make a hole, and you'd attach it right here. And then up here, you would use your little fastener, and you would just glue it down or tape it down and hide it underneath whatever you're decorating up here. And then when the hitch post is on, it would hook around that hitch post, and that would be your closure. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to make my own hitch post method just to show you guys that you can use other things in your stash besides going out and purchasing hitch posts. I'm going to use this gorgeous piece of bling that I got from Maggie White. It's kind of a nice orange fall color. And then I'm also going to take a piece of elastic. You can also cut up a hairband if you have a hairband. You can buy elastic like this in the sewing section at like Hobby Lobby or Michael's. I think I bought this one at Hobby Lobby. And so kind of the same idea is I will be attaching this with E6000 glue and hooking this up here, and I will hide my ends underneath this piece. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this down right here. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll come back and show you guys how to attach the elastic. The next couple steps to work on for this little box are to go ahead and add the closure. The rest of the closure we just glued on the little gem piece right here. And then also adding feet, and I just wanted to show you guys my little feet that I'm going to be using for my box. And I will be gluing these on with E6000 glue also. But they look like this, and what they are is just flat back pearls. And I used alcohol inks just to make them have a little bit more of a fall color. And I did really mess up my fingers because I was holding them in my hand and on a craft mat when I did these. And then, of course, as soon as I got to the last one, I thought, wouldn't it just be better to hold on to them and go like this? So I used the tweezers here, and then I just added the alcohol inks over them, and that way I kept my fingers clean, but it was already too late. And I didn't record it, but my hands were pretty messy, and my fingernails still have some of the alcohol inks in them. But I just wanted to show you guys those, and what I will be doing is just laying them on the bottom of the box or gluing them down, and I'm just gonna, you know, once I figure out exactly where the bottom is, I'll line them up on my craft mat like this, and I'll glue them down like this just so then my box doesn't roll. So I just wanted to let you guys know I'll also be working on that step while pieces are drying. And so again, we glued this closure on. You can see the button underneath there. And the whole idea for the buttons was so that when I have this hooked down, it holds and it's easy to slip over it. And so my piece of elastic is a lot longer than what I actually need. So I'm going to try to kind of adjust a little bit here. And I think that's about the right size. I'm just going to snip it afterwards, whatever little pieces are hanging out. But right there. And then what I usually like to do first is just take a small piece of tape or glue if you want to hold it for that long, and I just approximately tape it where I know it's going to be covered, and that just holds it in place. And then I can go ahead and then I try it one more time to make sure I can lift it on and off like that. And then I'm just going to snip the little tails off here. Okay, so once the tape's down, I am going to take some double stick tape also. And that's just because I want this piece to stick up higher. You don't have to do that, but I want mine to stick up higher. And I like to make sure that it's going to be glued down pretty good, so I also add just a little bit of glue. And because I want this to make sure it's really permanent, I am going to go ahead and add E6000 glue on here. And I'm just going to do that over the foam tape. And again, I'm just doing this just because I want to make sure that it's going to be permanent and stay for a long time. The other item I'm also going to add is just a little bit of hot glue. And that's because this might bond a little bit faster to my project so that I can add my feet a little bit faster. It will take a good 12 to 24 hours for that E6000 glue to actually set on this project. But hopefully the hot glue will set faster and I can continue to work just a little bit faster. So then I'm just going to tape or glue this down. And so now I have my closure. And so I think with that hot glue it'll stay pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and glue my feet down. And you guys, I'm just kind of using my craft mat just because it has a grid on it just for measurements, and I'm just trying to figure out kind of where I want my feet to go on my box. So that looks like it's a pretty good measurement there, and they are about 4 inches apart, and they have about 1 inch in between them right here. So I'm going to go ahead and glue those on the bottom. So I'm just going to use some E6000 glue, and then I'm going to put just a little bit of hot glue on there also. I'm just going to do 1 foot at a time. And I know you guys can't see this, but I'm kind of leaning down and looking at my angle underneath here to add my foot. So right there I've put it down. And then I'm just going to continue to do that 1 foot at a time. And I will be back after I get all of them glued down. Okay, I do have the legs put on and this glued on top. And again, this just hooks down here. I'm not going to leave it hooked just right now because the E6000 glue is still drying and I don't want to put pressure on it and have this accidentally come loose. But that's kind of a basic way to make an easy closure on different types of boxes. You can also very easily use this exact same closure on a journal and just wrap it from cover to cover. And then here are the little feet. I ended up actually gluing them a little bit closer than what I had talked about, and that was just because it moved, but that does stand very nicely, and that was the whole purpose of putting the feet on there, just so that it wasn't tippy and rolly, so it does stay in place. And if you do want to watch the whole decorating process, I will have a second video out on that. So for those of you who want to see that, I look forward to you guys joining me on that video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day and happy crafting.